Call the meeting to order. Mr. Karali, roll call, please.
Mr. Raccomando,
Present.
Mrs. Borelli,
Present.
Mr. Buffy, Mr. Quinn,
Present.
Ms. Sanchez,
Present.
Mrs. Scanapico,
Present.
Mr. Singh,
Present.
Mrs. Ottarelli,
Present.
Mr. Gehrig.
Present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been sent to all members of the Board of Education and to the Bergen Record in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, 1975. Dr. Katz.
Okay, thanks. As usual, we'll start off with our presentations. Our first presentation tonight is Mr. Ortega. This year we're proposing a new Summer Arts Academy, and this was really the idea of Mr. Ortega in partnership with our Parents Association. So rather than just having it on our agenda and me saying a couple of words about it, we thought it would be great to have Mr. Ortega come to the meeting to speak about it and kind of bring the program to life, because it's really a great addition for us. So thank you.
Okay, excellent. Here. All right, there. Okay, so thank you for hearing tonight, board members. It's my first time presenting. I've been trying to do this for a number of years. I tried to establish this when we had a community school years ago. We tried to make a run of it through that. It didn't really work out for whatever reason. I went knocking on a few doors to the rec and whatnot to see if they would sponsor it. What I realized is the Band Parent Association, the Musical Association, is a 501c3 organization. So we have everything at our disposal to run it ourselves, as long as we get the space to do it. And I think it's something that's really important to establish in this community is the summer arts program for students. So what we would offer is basically 5 weeks of courses, four possible courses that they can take per day, of 50 minutes each. And as you see, we offer instrumental music in 3 levels, beginning, intermediate, and advanced, I believe. And we'd also offer instrumental jazz, improvisation. We'd be offering vocal music, beginning, intermediate, and show choir, like a Glee style show choir. Class guitar and piano, just beginning basically. Musical theater is potential depending on enrollment, and that could be run a few different ways. The dance classes, also beginning, intermediate, and advanced, and color guard as well. The dance instructor who choreographed our musical this year also is an 8-time championship guard instructor, so he's offered to do a color guard techniques. We also have 2 visual arts teachers that are teachers that are interested in running classes in beginning, intermediate art and photography, and a yoga class. My sister happens to run a yoga studio, and she used to work for community school here teaching courses, and she's been fingerprinted and everything. That's the gist of it. I have the schedule here as it would run Monday through Friday. See there. We would have a lunch break. Students would have to provide their own lunch. I think the price scale is very competitive and actually very affordable. You see, we offer one class. They register for one class is $250. For the second class is $125. $75 for the third, and the fourth class is free. That makes they can take up 4 classes for under $500. And for 5 weeks of 4 hours a day, you can't get babysitting, right? You can't get childcare for that. So it's really affordable. The way it runs is the classes pay for themselves. We wouldn't run a class with under 5 students, but 5 students pays for 1 teacher and a little bit of money for basic needs like art supplies and whatnot. So that's basically how it works out. Does anybody have any questions? This is 4 through 12. So we can have beginning, beginning instrumentalists, middle school instrumentalists. It's really who mostly are probably going to go out for it. Musical theater, we're going to open it up from 4th through 12th grade, depending on who we get and how many students are in the program. The program itself, like if we get 50 students involved, that can pay for a musical theater production, like the one you saw in the spring if you went to the spring musical, where we have sets and costumes and all sorts of great teaching going on. If it has to be scaled down and we do more of a musical review, that's fine too. Just depends on, everything depends on enrollment. So, yes?
Could you please go back to the schedule?
Sure. And this would all hopefully be housed in that wing by the band room and the chorus room. I've tried to make it so that students
Oh, I see.
of certain levels can take different
I got it, okay.
things, you know what I mean? If you
Yes.
take beginning band, you can also take beginning dance, or you can take art, beginning art, and advanced dance or photo or something like that. I tried to make it a very even breakdown. So dance students can take yoga as well if they want more color art.
And for lunch break, would they be on their own, or would you have that as
We would
supervised?
have it supervised, but they would have to provide their own lunch.
Through the chair, is this is only for Saddlebrook students, or is this open to any 4th through 12th grade student anywhere?
Yeah, I did email the local band directors and arts instructors to see if they have students they want to send. The more the merrier.
So all the money that comes into the program is just going to fund the program?
That's what I'm hoping, because I don't expect a huge turnout this year. But for each year, we would hopefully keep that money in a segregated account specifically for that, so that we can put it into musical theater productions, or if we need art supplies, like I said, it is going to require funding. So,
Right.
but it should be able to sustain itself, as long as we get 5 students per class.
And the band board, the band has, this is like a booster club?
It used to be called the Band Parents. We turned it into the Music Association so that it could encompass more of the arts programs. So it's the Saddlebrook High School, Middle School Music Association, and it's got all the paperwork behind it for 501c3, totally legal, and we've got a treasurer and a president and whatnot. So.
Okay, thank you.
And they're fully behind it.
And when would you like to start this program?
Like June 29th to July 31st.
Through the chair. I'd say I'm very impressed. It's a very ambitious beginning for a new program, and I like seeing that, going for everything. I was wondering, did you get any feedback from any students or the other band directors on how much of an interest level might be out there at this point?
I've talked to parents, I've talked to students, and I've talked to other programs. I also ran this in Fort Lee when I was there. I was in Fort Lee before here for 6 years. I ran a program. What was very sad was the board ended up cutting that program, and basically the music and arts program funded all these other classes. And the reason they cut it was because there were one-on-one classes, like an NJS class where it was one teacher to one student. And the programs that were making money to fund the other programs, they cut it all. They threw out the baby with the bathwater. So I also taught at the Paramus Summer Arts Program, which was huge. So I've had many years of experience with these. I also taught at the New York Summer Music Festival, which is very prestigious. Did that for 6 years. So I've seen it. Things like this are very popular with students and parents alike. Usually programs like this cost upwards of $1,200 for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but I wanted to keep it way down. I tried to get it as affordable as possible while still being able to run the program.
I do appreciate that, and when you look at the hours, it is incredibly affordable. And I guess the idea is that if a single class is wrong, that just gets removed from the schedule and everything else just keeps going.
Yeah, and we inform we'll inform whoever signed up and say, this is what's available. Unfortunately, we couldn't run that class this year. Hopefully next year, everything will run. Get the word out right away.
Good, thank you.
Looks like an excellent program. Are you going to do a performance at the end?
Yes, there will be definitely like a concert and showcase for all of the programs. And there may be a separate night for musical theater that runs even a week later, because musical theater piece usually requires more time to get together. Again, it depends on enrollment. If we have 20 kids who are gung-ho to do a show like Oliver, we're going to use young and old, and hire a head orchestra and get costumes, then that'll be a full 6 weeks program. It's all outlined here.
Very good. Any other questions?
Yes, I do, through the chair. Mr. Ortega, when would you plan on advertising this? Soon?
I've been waiting to, so it's already.
Yeah, he's been starting to put it out there, but we were waiting for board approval, so first thing Thursday morning, it would start.
Good,
full
okay.
force.
Okay, yeah, no, I completely understand why. 29th is right around the corner, and
It's very fast, but.
this will take off, I do believe, especially I think the theater, you'd be surprised more students will really want to be involved in that. So you may be putting on a play.
I would love to, and you know, the idea is the kids who work over the summer, that's going to include all the programs.
Yes.
Visual art, the musical theater program, and that's grown. I've had now, this is my 4th year with the musical theater program, so I really see that as a contributing part of everybody gaining skills. And we do have a lot of Cracker Jack teachers who are on board with it too.
Good.
Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate the time and really appreciate your effort in initiating this. I think, like everyone has said, I think it'll be great for our students and obviously for our school if we get others here, like you said, and it's a revenue stream to help support our program. So there's so many benefits to it. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a
Thanks.
question.
Yes.
You showed the rates for each class that they took would decrease. Would there also be a discount if there's multiple children in a family?
I haven't worked that into the pay rate. I don't know quite how I would run it. Right now, as it stands, I think it has to run this way. I can figure out a way to do that. But unfortunately, that's not the best I can do right now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. All right, so next we have Christine Steiner and Chris Duval for part 2. After last month's presentations, we looked at all the work that's been happening and split it up into 2. So tonight is the assessment committee and our textbook adoptions that are all on the agenda as well. So I'll let you take us through those processes and yeah, that's it. I know I ended as I was saying more, but I know that really was the end of the sentence though. So.
Thank you for having us back. When we were here last month, we alluded to some of what was going to come tonight. So we're excited to be here to share with you the work that's been done this year. And really, what we have to share majority tonight is the work of the assessment committee that actually began last year under Dr. Katz. And the committee examined what our priorities and philosophies were, started to look at potential options for an online assessment progress monitoring system, and then realized with the creation of the supervisor positions that maybe it was best to put this on hold until our arrival. And so we reconvened the committee this year and revisited those priorities, and we started to take a look at what are both some online tech-based options, but then from a literacy standpoint, also realize that sometimes there's that need for that quick, on-the-spot assessment, and so created several subcommittees to create a literacy portfolio, which I will share with you also in a little bit. But we began by looking at, as I said, some of these tech-based programs. And this evening, we'd like to talk to you about what our screening process was for that, how we compared the potential options, and then in the end, which of the tools that we thought was going to work the best for what our purposes were, and also give teachers the best data in terms of student learning that was standards-based. So this was our initial list of programs that the committee some had looked at last year, programs that Chris and I were familiar with, and really started to look at what each of those features were in terms of being standards-driven and really being able to target specifically what students' strengths and weaknesses were. So when we went through the initial screening, we were able to eliminate some of those right off the bat because they didn't meet our basic criteria. And then from there, these were the systems that we considered, and again, had some that were crossed off the list for various purposes. We really wanted a tool that is going to span the K-12 spectrum in both math and language arts. And surprisingly, that was much more difficult to accomplish than we expected it to be. There were some systems that were very strong in the early years. There were some systems that were very strong in the intermediate years and some at the high school, but very few that really spanned that entire spectrum successfully. So of that list, the first 4 were crossed off for a variety of reasons. Some of them for that very reason of not fully spanning K-12 spectrum. Others of them were very counterintuitive in their use. And our thought process was, we want this to be a tool that helps teachers with what we're doing in the classroom, as opposed to something that's going to cause frustration and be very time consuming, both in terms of administering assessments and then getting usable data out of that system. So the first 4 on that list were eliminated just based on those criteria. So we really took a look at 3 systems in depth, webinars with representatives, general accounts where we were playing around and trying to use them to really get a sense of how the system functioned. So we took a look at AimsWeb by Pearson, Galileo by ATI, and MClassBeacon by Amplify. And in looking at those systems, there were several different criteria that were the main focus for us.
Okay, so as we were kind of sandboxing these systems and playing with them and trying to break them and trying to see what the features were and their capacity and capability, we kind of settled on a handful of things that we felt were, I'll say, non-negotiable as far as what the teachers deserved as a K-12 online assessment system. The first right off the bat was that you had the standards-based assessment tools. Could you search for, say, go into a test item bank for pick a grade, 4th grade, could you find test item questions that were directly linked to and made to test a particular standard that you were working on in class? Could you look for it that way? Could you develop assessments that way? So that was the first one, and AimsWeb actually failed the test for that. They did not have the capacity to do that K-12. Galileo and MClassCast. And so as we went through everything, the early numeracy and literacy assessments, Galileo did not have that. The high school level assessments, MClass is the only one that had actual high school assessments. Assessments that can be taken online, or were they just something that you made online yourself as a teacher and then printed and had to hand grade? The diagnostic tools, could you look at how individual students or classes of students were doing on a particular standard? Could you search that way? And then the diagnostic tools by student. So could you look at a student's progress over the years? Because we're looking at giving the teachers a system where if we implement this, whatever time frame to start collecting the data, could say a math teacher 5 years from now go back and take a look at how a student did 3 or 4 years ago in a particular standard and notice some gaps that either they recovered and did better over time, or that might still exist with a particular student? How flexible is this system in being able to track that? So we really had a big focus in the quality of the assessments and the diagnostic tools for how to analyze the data. That seemed to be where we kept coming back to those areas in and around us. So we settled on MClassBeacon by Amplify, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through a couple of very, very brief examples just to show you what we saw as we were walking through this and how impressive it was compared to the other systems. So just to give you a quick example here, I picked a grade 1 math performance task. So not only did they give you a prepackaged math assessment if you wanted it, because you could also make your own. Where if you wanted one on, say, a particular whatever graphing standard or a particular addition standard or something, you go through, you can take a look at it by task, and it would give you the prompt. So you could actually follow through with this if you wanted to take their prepackaged task, and you could give them the student tasks 1 through 4, and this listed for you not only which standard it was addressing, but what to do with the task, how to roll this out in your classroom if you wanted it, to that level. In terms of support, this is an example of that task. I wanted to show you this one because I have those probably couldn't do the Alpha 2 tasks over right now, let me tell you. They were very challenging, but that was a good thing. They're up to the standards. But then what was nice was that, again, it just didn't give you a prepackaged number of tasks, but then it also told you, all right, here's the approximate developmental level, and here's what the observed behavior of that child should be similar to. So they should be able to do this. The students should be able to correctly identify equations as true and the others as false, explaining each response. So this equation isn't true because, yada, yada, yada. So it gave you examples of what you should expect the student to be able to give you verbally if you wanted to check on that student's performance. So very, very detailed assistance with that for the teachers. Very good resources. Here's another resource where I had suggested instructional grouping. So if the student couldn't even perform task 1, which is the easiest task out of the 4, then it explains to you that you should be working on understanding that quantities on both sides of the equal sign are equal in value. So that would be the target for that group to work on that performance skill with that group if they struggle with task 1. And then, okay, they did well with task 1, then they struggle with 2 and 3, then they should be working on a different task. So very, very well laid out, very well supported, again, linked and easily accessible via the standards. And I'll let Christine show you the ELA example.
One of the things we really liked was the capacity of the system to have assessments both within and outside of the system. So the one that Chris just showed you is a performance task. So you're working individually with that student to gather that assessment data. But what you see here is an assessment that happens within the system. So students log into their account, they go online. I didn't put the whole passage here for you, but it's somewhat park-like in that students are reading a passage, in some instances multiple passages, and then being asked follow-up questions. Again, in order to save time, we didn't put in all of the slides, but with this assessment, not only do teachers have access to what is the correct response, but there's a rationale for why that's the correct response, which standard it links to, and the same levels of performance that if the student is missing this particular question, here's an area of focus for your instruction. So that the computer is generating that on these within the system assessments rather than the teacher having to walk through that whole process. But it just puts the information right at their fingertips, and again, it's completely based on each individual standard.
Okay, so I mentioned that the focus was both on the assessments and then what to do with that data, right? Because you have the best assessment in the world, but if you're not giving the teacher access to different products for how to analyze that data, then it has very limited value for the teacher. So this is just a quick example of an Algebra 1 assessment that you give to the students, and it's like red light, green light, right? So if it's green on there, then the student got the correct answer or performed well on that task. Yellow would be somewhere in between where they still need help getting it, and then red would be that they still need major assistance with understanding. They don't understand that standard yet. So what was nice about this was it wasn't just that you could see that a particular student across the row there in their particular column that they got whatever 4 out of the 5 were wrong or 3 out of 5 were correct, but then it also lists for you how tough that question was. How many of the students in the class got that particular question right? You could click on the question, go back and read it again yourself, like to see maybe that was a level 3 question, and the student, you could know, you could tell on here, you could analyze very quickly whether a student only got the easier ones right, or got a random mix of them correct, and be able to really discern what was at issue with that particular student, or maybe across that particular class with a particular standard. So it was nice to be able to kind of play with this in different ways in a very graphic and easy to read format. So that was very impressive. We did see this to some extent with some of the other systems, but nothing quite this mature. And something that we did not do with any of those systems at all, that was kind of the icing on the cake with this one for us, was what we call the honeycomb graphs, for lack of a better phrase. They don't really have they just call it floating maps, and I think they come up with a more exciting term for this, because this is really cool. Look, I think we have to, let's go to check this out. It was so good we had to print it for you, all right?
Because
So,
it's tough to see.
essentially what you're looking at is a zoomed in look at some of the math standards for that previous slide that I showed you, where you were looking at whether students got things right or wrong. So what you're doing right now is, these are the three colors there are the three standards that were addressed with that particular quiz. So on that quiz, again, red, yellow, green, right? Green light means that those students did well. This is a class-wide average, so as a class, what this is saying is that the students performed poorly on all three standards. So maybe this was a formative assessment, maybe you were given this before the unit even started, you just wanted to see it, they already knew it. And so the answer is a clear no, just at a glance, based off of the color coding. So what's neat about this, though, is that not only does it explain for you I know it's a little tough to see that on the bottom, but it tells you literally how many students in that class got it right or wrong in terms of performing the standard for that. It actually gives a very brief description of the standard, like what the student should be able to do in the honeycomb hexagon, along with the label of standard itself, and then it connects to all related standards. So you could discern a pattern of a particular student, a class, a strand within the standards, let's say. So, and then you could also see, like, okay, well, maybe if they're not ready for this, what step do I have to walk backwards with them in terms of the assessment? So in this case, what it does is it connects to, there's one HSA, the high school algebra, would kind of connect it right here. And then there's some 8th grade ones here and a 7th grade one. So in other words, this one's a foundational standard, foundational concept for this one, which is itself linked to this one, and so on and so forth. And so this one's blank. So there, it's not necessarily that all of them have 6 connected to them, but it's really nice to be able to see graphically at a glance, very quickly, how well students are doing, but furthermore, where the gaps might be. Because as we have the system like this over time, this would be very easy for a teacher to be able to go back and see if maybe the majority of the students that they currently have in the class didn't do so well in 8th grade on this either. Maybe they have to go even further back with those students. Or maybe they did really, really well. And they can have a little talk with their students about, hey, you guys knew all of this right here leading into that standard, like it's leading into that skill. So it took us a few minutes because we were a little, I don't want to say confused, but it was a little overwhelming. And then we realized the power of this particular product that they offer. But again, we just want to show you a couple of brief examples of the diagnostic tools. It certainly wasn't everything that they offered, but it was definitely head and shoulders above anything that we had seen.
And the flexibility involved in the diagnostic aspect. What you're looking at is a class view, but you also have the capability of clicking on a student name down the left and getting the profile of that particular student over every year that they've been involved in taking assessments on the system. So if we use this as the example, this student is in high school, but I can zoom out and scroll backwards and see how that student did in 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade, and really get a sense of, is this a common struggle for this particular child? Was it a strength and now it's not? So clearly there's something that I need to address there. So it really provides very targeted and specific information for both classroom level and student level.
Actionable information. And that was the difference that we really liked about this, was that this is actionable information. It's information that the teacher can take and do something with it to help that student very specifically. And for us, that was a key component that needed to be present for any online assessment system that we would be rolling out for the district.
So, Chris and I have done a lot of the pre-screening and played around with the systems, but our goal was to bring multiple systems back to our assessment committee and have them go through a similar review process that we had done. Unfortunately, as we said, through that pre-screening process, the vast majority of the systems we looked at were falling short. So, reluctantly, we brought one system to the committee, but prefaced that with, just because we're saying this is the system that we've looked at, doesn't mean that this is a yes, absolutely. really examine it, look through it, and if you look at it and it isn't what we've expected, or it's not meeting our needs, or you're finding flaws in the program, we'll go back to the drawing board, and we'll look at another series of systems. So we really wanted that honest feedback and not feeling like, well, this is the one that we're saying needs to be. So with that, we approached the committee with an evaluation rubric as they were examining this particular system. And we wanted them to have a similar focus to what we did, and we broke it down into the assessments that were in the system, really to review at their specific grade level. Because being just two people, we did an overview of the system, K to 12, but we wanted them to really focus in on the grade level that they're most familiar with, the one that they've been teaching this year, to examine the quality of the product. So are those assessments truly aligned to the standards? Are they searchable in that I need this particular standard and what items, test items are available to me? And that I can build my own assessments, not just that there's this preset quick check or formative assessment that the company has designed, but that based on what's happening in my classroom, I can build my own assessment to suit my needs. We also wanted them to look at resources that were available. So as we've been saying, we were impressed that we were getting this actionable data, but then what do I do with it? Or how do I address those needs? So does the system provide internal resources and links to external resources to give teachers ideas of exactly what they should do and how they should address those needs that they're finding? And is there a wide variety of things offered, not just that it's constantly linked to one particular source? We wanted them to look at the diagnostic aspect, whether there was a variety of ways in which information was presented. Is it at the individual level? Is it at the classroom level? And again, is it connected back to the standards? And the last piece was the flexibility of the system. What choices existed within the system, and is it what I'm going to call an open system, in that we are able then to upload our own assessments or our own assessment items, which may be a pro or may be a con. And this was really the lens through which we asked the team to look at the program. So in the end, here's the feedback we got from the committee members. This was on a 0 to 5 point scale, a 0 being that particular feature was non-existent, a 5 being it was completely developed and very comprehensive. So the first 4 categories that I described for you are in the 4s, which is a fairly strong view of the program. The feedback we got was that there are tons of tools. In terms of resources, again, teachers looked at this on a very limited basis. They found resources. There seemed to be a variety. Sometimes it was a little tricky to navigate exactly what was in there. The diagnostic tools, I think people saw Honeycomb in particular, and it's like, ooh, and how does this work, and what does that mean? Very colorful. Where the system fell down is in flexibility, which I think is more a result of the rubric that we created than the program. We've described the categories here very heavily weighted toward that flexibility aspect, that you could upload your own assessments or that you could import your own assessment items. This system does not allow that at all. Not necessarily a bad thing. They have teams of experts who developed the test items in this system. And they've been field tested, and they've gotten data back. And so they're tried and true items. When I was speaking to the rep about, why do we not allow that, it was very much that perspective of, we put in time and research, and we feel like we've created a wide variety and a wealth of resources that we don't feel that it's necessary to go outside and beyond that. So there is something to be said for that. We went into it thinking we wanted that option, and when we saw everything that was available in this particular program, I don't think we're going to find a lack of resources or tools for our teachers. I think there's plenty there that we can devise assessments and construct what we need based on the library that exists.
And I won't put you on the spot, I did recognize one of our committee members who did take the time to walk through late afternoon to walk through this with us in here. So, Aunt Jigger, I don't want to add anything from what you saw from your own experiences.
It was very thorough. There was a lot. It was a lot to look at.
Right, but that was what
That was
we're all
good.
talking about, right? That was a good thing. Right? It was,
Yeah.
very, very neat. So, thank you for your time.
Sure. So from this, we've been talking about where do we go from here. And as I mentioned, the committee members had a limited view of it. And so the feedback came back also, outside of the numbers, this looks like a great program, but I only got to play around in it for half hour, 45 minutes. It doesn't really give me that full picture. So I've been speaking with the rep from the company about the possibility of running a limited pilot program in the fall so that we would be able to really play around with the tool with our students to see what kinds of results we got before moving forward across the district. So that's still in the works, and I will certainly keep you updated as to where we stand with that. But in addition to the online system, as I mentioned when I started, we felt like there was really also a need sometimes for something rather than bring my class down to a computer lab or get a Chrome card, log them in, take an assessment. And so the conversation from a literacy perspective was, what else should we have so that teachers are able on the spot to gather information about their students? And we decided it would make sense to have a literacy assessment portfolio that would help us meet those goals. So in devising this portfolio, we wanted to focus on the foundational skills at each particular grade level, which I'll go into in just a moment. As I said, having those at the ready, on the spot assessments that I can just grab when I'm seeing something happening in the classroom. We wanted it to be able to inform our instructional decisions so that I can see where a student is performing right at that particular moment, and then I can make my decisions as to what my next steps are with that child or with a group of students. And there was a strong desire to really document progress over time. Again, much like the online assessment system, but when I'm doing something with my students in first grade and they move on to second grade, that next year's teacher can reflect back on what exactly the student's performance was in a particular area and help them make decisions about what they're seeing currently. So when we looked at foundational skills, we really were looking at a K-3 and a 4 through 6 perspective. And so we designed targeted assessments to look at what these foundational skills were. So not every student or every grade level in the K-3 is doing all of these assessments. For example, letter identification is typically something that's mastered by students during a kindergarten year. So once a child has mastered that particular skill, that assessment phases out for that child. There's no need for a first grader who knows all their letters and sounds to be sitting through that particular assessment. But it's something that's very important to an individual's literacy growth, so it should be in the portfolio. We're also looking at concepts about print, book handling skills, directionality, one-to-one as I'm reading. This particular assessment presents students with a book that's full of errors. Pages are upside down, words are out of order, there's no punctuation, and you're really trying to get a sense of what the student is noticing on their own. And it gives you an understanding of how they're approaching their development of reading, and gives you targeted areas then to draw out in your instruction so they become more aware of the basic functionalities of print. We have sight word assessment. A huge bank of sight words helps students with their fluency in their reading. So the more words that a student just knows, as opposed to having to really break down and decode, it aids the reading process. So we felt that was an important skill to be assessing as well. We have a developmental spelling assessment that is actually something that will continue across the grades and really gives us information as to what letters and features of words students are comfortable with and have mastered, and what our next steps for instruction would be. We wanted to focus on reading ability, and we have two different assessments for K-3 and 4-6, which I'll share in a moment. But at K-3, the focus really is on decoding ability, fluency, as well as basic comprehension of what they're reading. So we wanted to find a tool that would allow us to do that. We also have a writing assessment, which will target in on the three main genres from our standards. It'll be narrative, informational, and at these grades, it's opinion writing. And so it will be a on-demand writing where we're giving the students a topic and we're seeing what they're able to produce in a set amount of time. And then entering third grade, students will be involved in a critical reading assessment where they're given a passage and having to respond to a prompt related to what they've read. When we switch over to 4th through 6th grade, some of those early skills we expect to be mastered. So it looks like the list is shorter, but the focus is just shifted into other areas. So we're maintaining the developmental spelling assessment. Our reading ability, decoding is much less of a focus because those are skills that are mastered for most students by those grades. So we wanted an assessment that was going to shift away from focusing on decoding and paying much more attention to a student's fluency in their reading and their ability to independently comprehend, as opposed to being in a guided setting during that reading. What can I read by myself, and what am I taking away from that reading? And then maintaining the writing and critical reading assessments as well. So I mentioned the reading ability at the K-3 level, and a tool that will suit our needs is the DRA2. This is a comprehensive assessment tool. It has a wide variety of level texts that progress in terms of their difficulty, where teachers are taking information. It's like a performance-based assessment where the student is reading aloud to you. You're documenting exactly what they're doing, what they're saying. Following that, you ask students to retell what they've just read, so you get a basic understanding of what they've taken away from that story. And then you're asking them very targeted comprehension questions that go from a more literal level all the way up to a more critical interpretive level. This will help us really target in on what level of text is appropriate for our students and give us information on skills and strategies that we should support during our guided reading instruction. In 4th through 6th grade, we're going to shift out of the DRA2 into the IRA, the Independent Reading Assessment. And as I said, the focus shifts at these grades to that independent ability. And this is a tool that will allow us to do this. Again, we've matched students with an appropriate level text. We ask them to read that text independently. And because we're talking about higher level readers, these are often chapter books that will be read over the course of multiple days. And as the student is reading, they're encountering Post-it notes in various places throughout the text and being asked various comprehension questions. Go anywhere from plot and theme to characterization to author's technique, and really getting a sense of what skills and strategies the student is employing as they're reading independently. And we gather that information again to target in more specifically and support their reading and growth in a more guided setting. So this is really, really small, and the point is not for you to read it. The point was to give you a little excerpt of the portfolio. Each of those areas that I mentioned as foundational skills, there is a corresponding assessment that goes with it. And all of that was created into a giant portfolio. And through those pages, for each assessment, teachers are given the purpose of that assessment. They're given information on the administration of it, specific instructions, and most importantly is down the bottom here, implications for instruction. So what am I supposed to do with this information once I've gathered it? Because there's nothing worse than giving students an assessment and storing it and filing it away and then never looking at it again. So the whole point behind both the assessment system and the portfolio is, as Chris used that word, actionable. What do I need to do next with my instruction based on the information that I've gathered? So we felt that was a very important component to include for each of those assessments. Again, not meant for me to read, just as an overview. This is the table of contents from the portfolio, and it spans across the student's K-12 experience in Saddlebrook. The middle school, high school portfolio is still in development, so what you see up there on the slides is our placeholders. We don't know exactly what the specific items are going to be yet, but the K-6 information up there matches what we've developed in the portfolio. So much like the honeycomb web on the Amplify system, this gives you that progress over time. I can see how a student scored on each particular assessment from year to year. So throughout the course of the year, as I'm assessing my students, I'm taking that information and I'm gathering it into a folder. And at the end of the year, I'm passing that on to next year's teacher, who then has that as a starting place for that student. Yes, we need to reassess at the beginning of the year because we all unfortunately know what can happen over the summer. But it also gives me a place to reflect and figure out in those first few weeks of school before I've done my own assessments, where did that child leave off? And so I can make my beginning of the year instruction much more meaningful and targeted for them. It also serves as a place to notice areas of weakness and areas that I should be targeting. But it goes back to what we've been saying all night long of gathering specific information on our students and being able to translate that into practice in the classroom to support their growth and development. Questions on that before we switch to textbooks?
Through the chair, the digital assessment program, Amplify, it creates actual data for the teachers, the classroom, and the student through the whole educational experience. Does it also correlate all that information to create actual data for the district as a whole?
Yes, we have administrator access to that data so that, whether it be at the school level or at the district level, we're able to go into that information and look at trends over an entire grade level, over multiple grade levels, and really be able to fine-tune our program.
Thank you.
Would the assessments be given at a certain time? What's the frequency on the assessments for the students?
Two separate answers. Literacy portfolio, yes. For example, on this particular chart, if you could read it, you would see B, M, and E, beginning, middle, and end. And so there's specific time frames as to what constitutes the beginning of the year. So for example, you need to have the beginning of the year portfolio assessments completed by the end of October so that your instruction is up and running. And then once our mid-year checkpoint, will be a specific date for that. So some assessments are given at the beginning and the end, some are given 3 times, but all of that is spelled out within the portfolio. The online assessment system, the answer to that is to be determined. Yes, there will be set times, whether they're going to be quarterly benchmarks or a pre and a post, a beginning and an end, that all needs to be decided by us as we construct what our benchmark assessments are going to be. In speaking with the rep, she's a part of the startup of the program is developing what those assessments are going to be. Which standards do you want to focus on in the first quarter of the year, and then pulling those specific test items to construct that assessment. So all of that would need to be something that we're going to have to develop.
Which goes back to the theme of consistency that we had from our original vision early on in the school year. I would really like that, the capacity then to have a very consistent way of assessing the students such that not only the current teacher, but the future teacher that the student has can still use this as actionable data for that student.
Okay. So all the schools would be tested, say Long School and Smith School at the same time? So.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So you're from like it just when you get into the textbooks, so textbook tests are gonna go away, teachers are gonna have common assessments using the item bank on there?
Yes, teachers are going to have common assessments using the items on here as benchmarks. Are unit tests, chapter tests going to disappear? No, not completely. I'd be in a combination of both.
There'll be a standard, I guess, for when they create these for, it should be like the breakdown of.
So when we build the assessments, what happens is, so I decide we're going to have an October benchmark, and these are the math standards that have been taught to that point. So we construct the assessment, we choose which items out of the system we'd like to use. Those items become locked. They're no longer available to anybody else. No individual teacher can use that particular question on their own system. So what I see us creating as a district are sort of those culminating, how did we do on that instruction? But teachers will have the ability to create formative pieces along the way with the other items within that bank of questions. So if we know that we're focusing on math standard 1, 2, and 3, obviously I'm making that up, and that's what our benchmark is. After I've taught standard 1, I'm going to want to know how kids are doing. So I'm going to create a quick check just based on that particular standard. It's similar, yes.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Alright, so.
So as you know, next year we're implementing our AP World History course for 9th graders. And through that process, it's one course, one class, one teacher. So my process for this is different than it would be if it was a mandated course with multiple teachers. I worked very closely with the teacher who will be teaching AP World next year. We looked at several different textbooks and ultimately decided that World Civilizations, the Global Experience, was the best match for our particular needs. And through that process, what we determined was the textbook was thorough, and don't laugh, but accurate. You're surprised how many times there's mistakes in texts. That it provides a wealth of background information, but still maintains its readability, in that it's not too dense, it's not too much information. Students are really able to synthesize and understand the concepts that are being presented. Another nice feature of this are the next 2 bullets, in that throughout the text, there are sprinkled critical thinking questions that really help students see the connections between topics and time periods and regions of the world, and help aid their thinking as they're trying to put all of that together. And the second really nice part is there are assessments embedded throughout the text. And a lot of these are formatted in very similar ways to what they're going to find on the AP exam. So it is, I don't want to say test prep, but it helps prepare them for what those expectations are going to be right from the beginning of the text. So that by the time the exam rolls around in the spring, they're comfortable, they know what to expect, and there's no surprises. And it just becomes a regular part of what they've been experiencing. So that's our recommendation for AP World.
Alright, so ditto what she said for AP World but for AP Calculus. Essentially the same thing. I talked with the AP Calculus teacher for next year, and she and I reviewed 3 different texts. Same deal, looking at it for readability. The online resources are very important for AP Calculus, for the students to have the ebook available, to be able to practice the questions. Same thing, that would mimic the AP exam throughout the school year. And so we determined that the Larson book for AP Calculus was the best match for the students. So we're getting the textbook and the 6 years worth of the ebook access for AP Calculus. Likewise for the 3 mandated courses for mathematics, or Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, the entire math department collaborated with me for the school year to pilot. There were a couple of publishers who were nice enough to give us a year's worth of free access to not only class sets of their textbooks for each of those 3 courses, but also access for all the students to be able to use their ebook, which came in incredibly handy for preparing the students for the type of questions that they were going to experience with the new online exams this past month or that we've had these 2 testing windows. So that proved to be incredibly useful, so we really want to maximize the time that those students had the ebook access for those 3 courses as well. So at the conclusion of the school year here, as we're winding things down, the teachers evaluated, they've been looking at the 2 systems all along, they evaluated them on a rubric that the teachers and I developed, and lo and behold, it came out to essentially a statistical tie, which they were very quick to inform me the different ways that it was statistically a tie, being the math department. So they said, you know what, let's just see who gives us the better deal overall for the price, and we're happy with either system. And so we're going with McGraw Hill's Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 books, and the 6 years worth of ebook access for those 3 courses. And so those are the 3 courses that are tested for the ARC exams. And then finally, for the high school biology course, there was a plan already afoot when I arrived here last July to order some new biology textbooks. I got a chance to speak with biology teachers about that and bounce around the idea with them that since science is changing faster than we can have textbooks written and published these days, that while it's useful for an AP level course that's a bit more of a preset curriculum that changes, once every so many years, for the biology course, it might be wise, given that the next gen standards are going to kind of tweak what is being taught in that class, that we may want to look for something that changes in a little more of a fluid manner, and if possible, something that the students can actually keep with them as a resource as they move on from one science to the next, since they're so interconnected, and will be even more so with the next gen standards being implemented. So I mentioned to the teachers, maybe we should look at something like the Biozone workbooks that are out there that are the only product right now that is already aligned fully to the next gen science standards. And essentially what it is, it distills the most crucial information and graphics and everything from a biology textbook and puts it in a workbook format that's roughly 150 pages, so it saves on the backache of carrying to and from class. And it's a workbook that they can actually write in where they have questions that are very rigorous and actually help the students out with a lot of the Common Core, ELA, and math standards that are appropriate for a student at the high school level. So it seemed to be a really, really good resource that we're going to try out this next year in lieu of ordering textbooks that would be much, much more expensive. So we're going to try that out as switching over to more of an annual workbook cost at a fraction of the cost of what it would take to give the students biology textbooks. So the biology teachers are very excited for that, to have that opportunity. So we're putting forward the proposal to have Biozone workbooks for all of the biology students as of next fall. Any questions?
Any questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, the work, I think, has been a long time coming in a lot of ways. The assessment committee, we know that our teachers have not been really armed with the resources and the data that they need, as you said, to know where their students are performing and then how to use those in actionable ways. And so it's something that's been very much needed. And the textbooks, obviously, are something that teachers have been craving for a long time, too, and having them updated and relevant and usable. So I know it's a tremendous amount of work that went into all of this, so it's appreciated. I know it's going to make a difference for our students, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I still have some other items to report on. The first one is, it's a little old already, it was in the most recent district update, but I just wanted to highlight the new middle school recess program, because that's just, it's a small thing maybe, but it actually makes a very significant difference in the school day for our kids. Our middle school lunch periods are long, and it's a long time to be in there, and students finish eating near the beginning of the period, and the rest of the time is kind of restless time. So we've extended the opportunity, well, not the opportunity, it is for all students to go outside, and they have a lot of different choices of things they can do during that time. So I want to thank Mrs. Coffey and obviously all of our middle school staff for implementing that and making it a permanent part moving forward also of our middle school day. Last year we had a conversation about summer reading and summer work. All three of our elementary schools had different assignments. Some were required, some were optional, different amounts, and now we're completely aligned. Actually, Christine really led that effort. So I don't know if she's not listening or not, but yes, thanking you for the work you did for the summer reading. That's okay, and just aligning, making sure that number one, the work was quality and relevant, and number two, that all of our schools are aligned in what they're doing. So again, as we talk about trying to be consistent in providing our students with a similar experience, that's a big step and something that needed to be done. So thank you. Recently, there were some changes announced with Park for next year. We'll talk much more about this as we move into next year, but they've reduced the testing time for students. They've consolidated the 2 windows into 1, and they've reduced the number of test units. So the amount of testing time for students, the amount of disruption to the school and the school day should be greatly minimized. I am assuming that we will be administering the park next year. The governor also recently, you may be aware, announced that it is time, and he believes it's time for New Jersey to give up on the Common Core. But he did say that he still believes we should administer park. So we'll see what happens with that. In terms of that and all of our curriculum work, we're going to continue ahead with our curriculum work. I know there was a little bit of, well, now what do we do? Because we knew where we stood with CUSAC, that our curriculum didn't mirror the Common Core, didn't reflect the Common Core standards, which we need, obviously, to be in compliance with CUSAC. But according to the commissioner, until anything else is out there, the Common Core is what we should be following and what our curriculum should reflect. And so we're going to move forward with what's required of us now to continue that. Recently, I was contacted by Dr. Aaron Graham. He was the executive county superintendent in Bergen. He's retired now. He's involved in a lot of different initiatives. The University of Pennsylvania and the EIRC have a New Jersey network to close the achievement gap. And it's been very active in South Jersey. They've had 23 participating districts in South Jersey. They're looking to open up a network in the northern part of New Jersey, and they invited us to be a part of that. They're looking for 15 core districts to participate. So we did express interest. They're hoping for a 2015-16 beginning to that. And I'll keep you posted as we hear more, but we did express interest and hope to be one of those districts who can participate in this network, and again, hopefully see some improvements with our achievement gap. Finally, everybody received a letter, a lot of parents received a letter that we had unannounced lockdown drills in 3 of our schools last week. This was part of the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of School Preparedness and Emergency Planning. They had an initiative that they started several years ago. It was really after the Connecticut incident. And it's not monitoring. They're here to watch our drills, to provide us with some feedback and support, and to share some information that they have learned from doing this through schools all over the state. And it really was that type of experience. We had people from the prosecutor's office here, like I said, from the DOE, and a lot of members of our Saddlebrook Police Department as well. We conducted the lockdowns in the middle school, high school here in this building, also at Smith School and at Franklin School, and got a lot of good feedback. We shared with them that the changes we already had planned for September, and they were actually very, very supportive of what we were doing, and gave us some ideas to tweak that too. So that was really a beneficial experience for us. So any questions on any of those items?
Through the chair, the faculty was not aware of the drill?
Nobody was. No, they contacted me about a month ago and they asked for a date, and it took that long because we were waiting for park testing to end. So the only people who were aware were myself and Ray prior to that date, and obviously in the police department and so on. And then on that day, I alerted all of you and alerted our parents, as they were happening, so that people wouldn't get worried. But up until now, we really just walked into the building, into the office of the school. We found the principal and introduced everyone and said, okay, let's do a drill.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Katz. Agenda action items?
Through the chair. Make a motion to take a 5-minute break.
Motion. Do I have a second?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? carried. Motion to reconvene?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that.
Okay, student services. Any questions on any of these items? Just number 8 is a revenue. It's not a cost, just to point that out. It's a tuition student into our program.
Dr. Katz, I noticed that the number of district placements, out-of-district placements, I should say, is less than it's been.
Right, and a big piece of that is our new programs. Exactly.
Okay, just want to point that out.
All right, under curriculum, items 1 and 2 you just heard about. Number 1 is the textbooks that were presented. Number 2 was the program Mr. Ortega spoke about. 3 and 4, speaking of out-of-district placements, Mr. Garrick's comment, 3 and 4 are new programs. Our autistic program at Smith School, primary autistic program, and number 4 is the BD class here in the middle high school. I'm sorry, number 2 is not what Mr. Ortega spoke about, that's number 5. Number 2 is the program that Mrs. Jager presented to us last month. So I have my presentations off. Number 2 is the summer reading reinforcement program that was presented last month on the Wednesday night. Number 5 is the program that Mr. Ortega just spoke about. Number 6 is summer enrichment, which is something that runs here in the high school each year. It's been going on for about 4 or 5 years. Item 7 was a revision to our 504 manual. This is something that Mrs. Madison led this and presented, and we discussed this at our curriculum committee. I know Mrs. Bradley spoke about it in her report last month. And number 8 is additional curriculum writing for this summer. Number 1 and 2 are part of the K-6 that we approved last month. This is just the kindergarten piece. Last month we approved grades 1 through 6, and then 2 high school social studies courses. So any questions on any of those items? Okay. Are there any questions on workshops or field trips? The field trips are a combination of end-of-year trips and also ESY trips. All right, Mr. Crowdy, can you speak about number 3 and 4?
Sure. With the food service department, this was reviewed with the Buildings and Grounds Cafeteria Committee. Pontonian's in its 5th year. You're allowed to have the original contract and then 4 renewals, as long as they stay within the Consumer Price Index. So we're finishing up the 5th year, required to go out for proposals. There are 19 food service contractors, companies that are approved by the state, and they all are aware of this was our year to go out for proposals. An ad was placed in the newspaper. I received three requests for the proposal. I sent them out, and I received one of them back, which was Pontonian's. So this recommendation is to approve Pontonian to be the food service management company for 2015-16 with the fees you see stated there and a guarantee stated there of $40,000 for 15-16. Any questions on that one?
Put this out to bid again?
Could we put out the bid again? You could, but now you're running into a time problem. If you got another company here to make the changeover for September. And I don't know what else you would get. Response-wise, when I said these companies have it, they're all registered, they all have bidding services that they see the ad in the paper, they're alerted to it. They review if they want to go. There's large companies and they don't want smaller districts, and there's various reasons why. I said it was done by.
And that would be 1 year? Would it be?
Yeah, I mean, it could 1 year, and then we could go out again after the year. You don't have to renew with them. This is what I have now. You could go out next year and do the same process again.
I just think we're running short on time, because if we were to repost it, get
You
other
could put ad
proposals,
in the
if we
paper,
do
get the
get any
proposal
other
back.
proposals, then by the time they got in here, we'd have to vote on it and approve it.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
if the kids aren't eating food,
I don't know what else we could do regarding the menu. I don't know what we could do in regards to that
Well, there are. I mean, we made a lot of changes to the menu this year. And I know anyone from the Buildings and Grounds Committee can speak about that.
Okay,
They've introduced the farm stand, which is
okay.
100% tenderloin chicken, you know, opposed to the processed chicken. A little bit more pricey, but
Through the chair, I think overall over the years, Pontonian has been very willing to work with us and has adjusted a lot of their menu and a lot of their food service delivery systems in order to better serve our students. And from what I know anyway, it seems like it has gotten better every year. I doubt there's that much difference between them and any other food service doing the same thing. It is cafeteria food.
Any other thoughts?
Okay. The next one with the cafeteria lunch prices. The change here is elementary lunch is going from $2.60 to $2.70, and that's because of a state formula. It's not because of, Pontonian. It's a required minimum pricing that they have to charge, and since we were under that, we have to increase that price. High school, middle school remains the same. Reduced lunch is the same. Breakfast is up 10 cents, and the faculty lunch is the same. And there was a few prices you saw in your attachments for individual items, milk and so forth, where there were slight increases in those prices just due to the expense of those items. Any questions on that one?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm just going to go through a few more to highlight some of them. Number 6 is part of our lease purchase, our annual lease purchase. The Dell purchase is for the Chromebooks and obsolete computer replacements. CDWG is for additional wireless access points, and the Apple is for our photo lab, the upgrade of our photo lab.
And that's going to be a Chromebook cart in each of the schools, right?
That's correct,
Okay.
except for Washington. We did Washington this year, and there was no need really to purchase more for Washington School than they have in their current card. Number 9 is a contract with the Visions program at Smith School, and then here in the middle school. This is a 1-year contract. It had been in the past, we had been approving 3-year contracts. However, because of our new programs, we anticipate at Smith School needing those 2 classrooms back the following school year. So we're doing a 1-year contract with them, and they know that we'll need that space, and we anticipate that the middle school program will be able to remain. So we'll change that contract the following year. Item number 10 is to allow a transfer into our capital reserve account at the end of the year. That's a maximum allowable number. That doesn't mean we'll have that much money left over at the end of the year to deposit. We're suggesting that we approve the maximum, and that way whatever deposit we are able to make into capital reserve, we're able to do up to that amount. Number 11 allows Mr. Crowdy to pay the bills over the summer between Wednesday and our next board meeting at the end of August. 12 and 13 are contracts for parents who transport their own children. Number 14 are the computers that are being replaced with the Dell purchase. Will be recycled. Number 17, outstanding checks. All those checks are over 1 year old and are still outstanding, so we'll cancel those. Number 18, Mr. Crowdy, if you could speak about that. I know we talked about this at Buildings and Grounds also.
Yes,
Presentation.
Yes, we did review it, and this item, this is the first part. What it is an energy program that is funded by the state. There's certain criteria. This is the first part. We pass this resolution and send the application to the state. There's 5 approved consultants that would bid for the work. Once we put out the RFP, we would select one of them. They come and do the energy audit, make recommendations. The next phase, we would take that report, put it out to an energy savings company, and then we could do projects, well, they would identify projects to do, whether it's windows, boilers, lighting, well, energy savings, in a way that we're going to reduce the energy costs and have an offsetting lease payment, so there's no effect on the budget. You're lowering your energy costs and then having these projects being done at a net zero. So this is the first part. Again, this is the first part is all funded by the state, so there's no cost to the district. I'll go on to the next one.
Yeah.
The next one is a new law that was just passed on May 7th. It requires the districts by July 1st to adopt the resolution listing all our contracts that were awarded during the past 12 months. So we went back from June 2014, listed all the awards, the vendor, what the project was for, the dollar amount, and that was on your attached exhibit. And that's it. I mean, they're all board approved in different sections of the year, different times of the year, and now this is all encompassed in one time. Any questions on that one?
Through the chair. Is that due to the end of the fiscal year and going into another fiscal year that they wanted a recheck, or do you have any idea why they need to create that law?
My association put out some information on this, but there wasn't too much detail on what they're looking for here. Like I said, these are all board approved. I don't know if it's just to alert the board. These are all the contracts we have. Some are being renewed, and some are canceling out after a year. I don't know the true meaning behind it, but we are trying to comply with that requirement. I said it was just passed, and it's due before July 1st or by July 1st.
Thank you.
Any questions on that?
Chair, just going back to number 18, would PSG&G be involved in that at all? If they recommend anything, or?
Not in the presentation that the consultant gave us. They're not one of the companies that would do the energy audit. I don't believe they're one that would bid on later on down the road.
Okay.
I will tell you if they are, but that's one company that can do it later. But right now the answer would be no.
Okay, thank you.
If no other questions, I'll continue with number 20. With the referendum that was just approved, we will, actually tomorrow is the day for the bond sale. That'll be done in the morning, that'll be done during the day. There could be premiums that the companies will bid on and will have some earnings there, as well as interest in the account while the money's there before we pay the contractors. So with through the bond council, we have to pass this action because funds cannot stay in that capital projects fund. All it is the amount the voters approved. You can't have accumulated earnings there. So the earnings, whether it's interest or a premium on the sale of bonds, have to get transferred to another fund, either a general operating fund or this is the debt service fund. And I recommend they be transferred to the debt service fund to pay down principal and interest on these bonds and reduce the cost to the taxpayers. Any questions on that?
All right, items 21 through 26 are, I think, self-explanatory unless anyone had questions on that.
Through the chair, on number 26, is it possible for each school maybe, when the facility is requested, that if there is anything that is specific, like a do or don't or a contact, for instance, I know that we had used for the cheerleader, the high school cheerleaders had a dance at Long School, and some of the parents didn't realize that the gym floor had been redone and not to have like beverages in there. So just like little things like that, things that aren't allowed, maybe attached to each school.
Well, when the request the facilities, they're given an agreement form to sign, and one of the items on there is a list of rules. That's in our board regulation, and that's just reiterated, and it says in there too, like gyms, you can't have drinks and food in there.
Okay. Do they give you
They're
a
supposed to sign off
contact
on it.
number, like when you're in the school, if you have any questions or you have any problems, or would you just find the janitor that would be in there?
Usually, it's the something
Okay.
that's signed to the building, that's who their contact is, and if there's any issues, he would
Right.
contact the supervisor of buildings and
Okay,
grounds.
all right, thank you.
Sure.
All right, policy, these are all second readings. These are the same policies that Mrs. Scanapieko reported on last month. There were no other changes. Item 2 accompanies the regulation to 5600 Code of Conduct, and these are just the charts of discipline for each of the schools, and they will all, once approved, they'd all be published, as they are now, in each of the schools' handbooks.
Thank you, Dr. Katz. Committee reports. Mr. Quinn, negotiations?
Negotiations is going well. We missed a meeting due to some personal issues. Our next meeting will be January, there we go, June 16th at 4 o'clock, and we continue to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
I will give a follow-up in closed session.
Do we have any old business? New business, we have a scheduled goal-setting meeting for July, I would think. Dr. Katz, we have a meeting set up with the township. We thought maybe that would be a good day to meet.
We could do Monday, June 6th, if that works for people.
How's Monday, June 6th for everyone?
July.
Oh, July, I'm sorry.
Monday, July 6th.
And
Set a precedent.
we have the township joint meeting that's doing it,
Yeah.
like 3 o'clock.
So,
And for this goal-setting meeting, are you looking for the New Jersey School Board rep, Al, to come in and moderate it, or?
I think that would be a good idea if we could get out to
I've
come
asked
in.
him, he's been out, I emailed him today, I didn't get a response yet, so we could check tomorrow, but, July 6th would be the first day, and then I guess there's at least one.
Maybe give him a
alternate
couple
day.
options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked him for a couple of dates.
How is everybody with July 6th?
What's
I'll
Monday?
time tomorrow.
What time would be good, around 5:30, 6 o'clock?
Either's fine with me.
6 o'clock? Okay, 6 o'clock.
How about an alternate date that we can give for his schedule? Or you can just look at the 7th, 8th, if people want to.
I'm good that week, so.
Okay. Want to just go in order?
6,
7,
7,
8.
8, okay.
6,
That
7,
week,
8, in
6,
that order, I
7,
guess?
8. Okay.
We have a motion to open the meeting to the public.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Residents are requested to state their names, addresses as the subject matter. In the event it appears the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 45 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by a participant to 5 minutes duration. Issues raised by members of the public may or may not be responded to by the board. All comments will be considered and a response will be forthcoming in and when appropriate. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding students and employees of the board are discouraged and will not be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. Members of the public should consider their comments in light of the legal rights of those affected or identified in their comments and be aware that they are legally responsible and liable for their comments.
Couple things, I just wanted to touch on what you said about the middle school recess program. I think it is absolutely wonderful. I think it gives them such an outlet to get out and not sit in there and who's bullying who, who's pushing who, who's getting on each other's nerves. I think that was a fabulous idea. And just talking to my son and his friends, they're so happy that they get to get out. I also was able to present a couple of scholarships. I went to the scholarship dinner the other night, and we should be very proud of our graduating seniors. Some of them are really on a good path, and we should be very proud of some of the awards that we're giving out to our students. And lastly, I just want to touch on the Pomptonian issue. I've never really been a fan of theirs. I just want to know, are they picked basically on price? Are they present like, do you guys get to sample the food, or
They were the only ones that bid.
They're the only ones that bid.
We're the only ones that bid, yes.
Can we go back for lunch meetings? I mean, it's just, I know that they only provide, this is the amount of food that's ordered, that's what they provide. I know there's been instances with kids in primary school dropping it for their lunch, because they were short. There's all kinds of things going on. I mean, my son lives on chips and water, basically, that's what my son, he tries the food, because he's hungry, he's a grown boy, but he's buying food and throwing it out. And I also I've spoken to them. I had talked to the very ones I've spoken to them personally. There's a big issue with their whole money problem. I think my son gave money, for instance, I believe it was last Wednesday, gave $20. I've been receiving notices every day, 2 times a day at least, or I've been receiving notices that his account is in a negative balance. Thursday morning he brought it. Now, I know we're only on Monday. Thursday morning he brought it in. This morning they said he was $3.50 in the negative. Now, I know that they say there's some turnover time, but I'm getting towards the end of the year and I don't want to have a balance with them. I would like to be, zero balance at the end of the year, because I don't want to hold on to their money. But are there issues that can you maybe talk to them about that issue? I don't want to pay on credit card online because they're going to charge me $2 every time. I want to give them 20, they're going to charge me $2, and I think that's ridiculous for a credit card. And like I said, I just don't think the quality is good, and if that's all if those are the only people putting it, they didn't look into that. For next year then, if you can't do it, or the following year, if you can't do it for this coming school year, I mean, it's just, when Dr. Fadina was here, when they first came in, and the day she was introduced to us, they showed up and put out a spread. And we all got to sample it, and we're like, oh wow, this is good, this is good. And then that first month of school, we said, where was the wraps that they had at the presentation? Where was, they put out a really nice spread. But I just don't know if they're, I just wish we could do something else.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Jessica, I'm 73 Wilshire Parkway. I just wanted to talk a little bit too about an issue. Being on the PTO board, our pages last night receiving complaints about the same thing. There's, I travel on lunch, we get charged for 2 lunches, or charge for snacks, they have snacks, and there's always that problem back and forth. They don't know where the money's going, and why they can't get lunch, and also, again, you think about quality of food, they don't want to pay for it. So, I mean, I understand that they don't know the bid, but I would hope that we find them something else to do, because there's so many problems with it. Parents aren't happy, kids aren't happy. Hi, Jennifer from 400 Feet Tower Road. Kind of just reiterating what everybody else has said. We as a PTO board did actually have a meeting with executives from Pontonian earlier this year. They promised us things would get better as far as I've been told from the children and people who have been doing ice cream sales. They did not. They had a nutrition fair. They got our kids all excited about fresh pasta. Got them very excited about all these new things that they were going to have. They haven't had any yet. They have a produce, what do they call it? The vegetable, like the fresh veggies things. Kindergartners can't even reach it, it's up above their head. And like Jess said, we get regular, like at least 3 times a week there are people commenting on our PTO Facebook page about their kindergartners getting charged $8 in one day. A 5-year-old doesn't need $8 for food. Mine throws her food away for what I'm hearing from the cafeteria. There's people working ice cream sales and having to send them with as many snacks as they're probably spending on their lunch in the first place. So I think that maybe we need to change the specs, or we need to maybe increase the price if they can do better quality foods. I'd be willing to pay more if it was food my kids would eat. Now, $3 is kind of cheap for a lunch anywhere. I don't even know what to say, but it's really disgusting. I don't think that the contract should be renewed as it is in this current state right now. I think changes need to be made, and they need to be kind of put on blast. They need to be told either this improves next year, or we're going to find someone else, and we're gonna find another way. We're gonna change the specifications in the bid, do something to make someone else able and willing to come in and take our service on. It can't continue this way. I know it's cafeteria food, as Mr. Quinn said, but my child is worth more than that, and her nutrition is more than that. Both of them.
Thank you, Mrs. Wayne.
Good evening. Omar Rodriguez, 275 Madison Avenue. I'm sorry, I apologize for not being here last month. Emergency happened. Even though that I'm at 30% of my capacity. I'm here because I see that things are piling out. I still have no responses. So I'm going to go over a few things first on what happened in the agenda or what's going on in the agenda. And then I will go to your items. But I'd like President, Chairman, that at least you are responding to the citizens and taxpayers that should be, when someone is right here, and we will follow and serve with respect. Having some answers. If you don't have it, you can just look at them for next month or next week. First and foremost, I'd like to go to tonight's agendas. And anyone on the board, any elected officials, can answer me. Line item 10, authorize administration to transfer an amount not to exceed $100,000 from the fiscal 2014-2015 budget application to the a couple of reserve accounts. I'm going to over the $500,000 in that line item transfer, as well as any other line item transfer items for this year, as well as last year. I want to see if there's some kind of trend on the lines that we are having monies at the end of the year. But if someone can just tell me where those $500,000 that are unspent are specifically coming from, I understand it might be from different line item transfers, but maybe it's just coming with one particular one. Any answer? $500,000?
We'll address them at the end, Mr. Rodriguez.
All right, fair. Then I will come to the items that are for second reading. I've been reading the first page. This is evaluation for board self-evaluation. I find this ironic. How can you or your colleagues can self-assess yourself? You were elected by the people. The best evaluation will happen at the polls. When the people have to speak up, not here. Everybody will say that you're doing a great job. But the real evaluation will happen at the polls. And you are responsible for everything that goes on in here and in every single classroom. The professionals are not going to be thrown in. It's up to you. Therefore, I think that this is a joke. It's just a formalism more than any other thing. But I don't think that this should be even considered. Because none of you will just throw under the bus any of your colleagues. And it doesn't have no weight at all. Because no one can say anything negative against your own board of education. And again, I just want to be redundant. The best evaluation will be done every time you run for the election. Following with that, as you might be aware, I'm not a fan of the attorney. Last month, the firm was reappointed. I think that they're going to do things right. It's my personal opinion. As you might be aware in the past, I have complained several times. They have changed several items because they were in violation of my legal rights as a citizen, as a taxpayer, and they have changed it. But still, I believe that you can approve language. I'm going to make my case just for today. I'm just my personal opinion, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And I just want to pick up something today. When we are talking about board officers, specifically, I'm going to talk about 0152. In the second paragraph, it says, the candidate receiving a majority vote of the members of the board present and constituting a quorum will be elected to office. For me, it doesn't make sense. If you don't have a quorum, you don't have a meeting. You need to involve. I don't care if you respect from any other school district, the state, but this is Salvo. Salvo paid the legal bills. For you guys to come and vote, you have to make sure what you're voting on. But I will continue. On the third paragraph, in the event that no candidate receives a majority vote of the members of the board present and constitute a quorum, the procedure shall continue until someone receives a majority vote. They talk about selecting a president, she's talking about electing a president. You elect when you go to the poll. You select when you're in here, the Q&A, consider a vote to select the president meeting. But what I cannot understand, again, several times, the word quorum. Basically, you don't have a quorum, there's no meeting. But then, what bothers me with this language is in the last paragraph. Bear with me for 1 second. The last paragraph. A president or vice president who refused to perform a duty imposed upon him or her by law may be removed by a majority vote of the board members present and constituted at the board. And so on and so on. I wonder, no one, this is referring to being the president or vice president. If none of you will like to take the presidency or vice presidency, it goes to the county, the school district, education from the county will select one. But still, if you refuse, then your members, the board of members, can expel you out. Doesn't make sense to me. If no one wants to be the president or vice president, why you are going to represent a kind of conflict and vote one of your fellow members that were just told to assume the presidency? Then again, it's maybe semantic and the language. I couldn't do it much better than my broken English. Believe me, goodbye, because I could have done it. But I believe that it's too redundant right here. But then again, this becomes better. I'm just going to go to 32:12 attendance. I don't know if the attorney gets paid for each revision right here, or for each policy, or work by the hour, I don't know. But the 32:12 is the same as 42:12. The 32:12 is for teaching staff, the 42:12 is for support staff members. Do we need two policies? Talking about the same thing, same language. The only thing that changed is just the title. I will further read. It says on the second paragraph, basically, if the person do not attend, is subject to dismissal and no certification of any charges. Bingo. We're talking about attendance. That's a very nice subject that I've been following for such a long time. How can we impose on teachers, and by the way, all the time that I come over here and try to express myself is because I'm against the misuse of administration, poor administration. Instead of putting those resources and those monies into the kids' classroom and improve the grades in the school, because it's pathetic right now with all the amount of money that we're paying to the school district, that we're still at the bottom of the totem pole. So that's why I'm here, and I will continue coming until I see Saddle, the school district, on the top, not on the bottom. So, we are talking about penalizing our teachers if they don't come to work, or if they doctor or forgo any of their absences. Fine. You want to use this language? Then what happened with administration? I don't think that Mr. Katz or Mr. Karani might have any problems on signing in a sheet. How do you know when he's here, when he's working, or when they're working here? Just because the contract says salary employees do not sign in, do you think that that's a good business policy? Is that a way to protect the money of the taxpayers of Southbrook? Everyone that works for the school district should sign in for security reasons, for insurance purposes, and actually to keep track of who is in here, who's not in here, who is entitled to vacation, who's entitled to sick time, who is entitled to personal days, and that carrying over personal days, sick time, vacation into 1 year to the other, those days gotta be over. Everybody should be accountable. And the only way to make them accountable is to make them sign. That's a good business policy. And I don't want to hear that rhetoric or the reality, oh, when you're salary employees, you don't have to sign in. It is up to you that you're elected by the people to impose or to implement a business policy. Everyone should sign in. And right here, we're talking on 3212 to impose penalties. Some of that says to actually dismiss a teacher. Come on. It should be equal and uniform for all district school employees. Regardless of who you are, whether you make $20,000 or $200,000 a year. Everybody should sign in. Then, 4212 is the same thing, one for staff members, another one for teachers. Then under substance abuse, we're going to go to 3218 and 4218, same thing, almost the same language. One is for teaching staff members, and another one is for staff members. But I get a problem with this. I'm not going to bore you with the reality, but again, sign the language. Terrible. Terrible. You should not even be considered tonight. You should pull out, because I got one question. If anyone can respond to me tonight. He's talking about teacher. What it is. It says, I'm going to start reading from here. On the first paragraph, on the last 3 lines, a teacher and staff member is prohibited from possession, use, distribution, or being under the influence of any substance during work hours or at a school-sponsored function where the teaching staff member has been assigned job responsibilities. The same goes for teachers. Assigned job responsibilities. I think the language is terrible. Or, so it's telling me that if a teacher or staff member that got drugs and don't have an assigned responsibility goes to the school function and it's okay, it will not be penalized. It's wrong. That is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever you are in charge of a school district, it is not okay for a teacher or staff member or a staff member to bring any kind of bills or any kind of drugs to a school function, whether you got an assigned job responsibility or not. And I hope that you agree with me, but I can go on, and you can tell me, I can tell you the language right here, it is redundant. 3218 is the same as 4218. It is redundant, but then again, it doesn't tell me the specifics on when these teachers or staff members can be brought up on disciplinary sanctions. But the main one is that if we got a football event and the teacher is not assigned a job responsibility, it's okay if the person is smoking. on the bleachers. It's okay if they pass to the school students, no penalties. Would you agree with that? Full 4,000. I think I got one more on this. By the way, in the meantime that I'm picking on this, it looks nice, those tablets on here. I said it before, but it's poorly done. You should be assigned program members, everyone, a tablet, because you are doing this on a volunteer basis. You're not supposed to be printing stuff or pages. Let's say, for instance, I can't find the page that I destroyed, but let's say that you want to print this. Why you should bear the payment of these documents? Why? You're on a volunteer basis. Let's say, for instance, that you care so much about these policies that you want to discuss with your fellow members. Why do you have to print it at home or at work? To take the chance that you can just be sanctioned? Shame on the people that is running this school district and day-to-day operation. Because this is just for the show. Those topics are just for the show tonight. You should be able to take it home. And those tablets should be loaded with every single thing that is going on in the school district. You are the ones that are in control. You should take it home. So whenever I ask a question or I need to go back to anything from last month, you should just be able to have it at your disposal, at your fingertips. It's a shame that a district like ours that is no board is sending everything but an email. So what do you think that the board of members have to do? To print all the package, 500 copies? You should have a tablet. A tablet costs $100, much less than what we're paying for the cell phone on some of the people that we have right now. And again, I hope that at the beginning of this new school year, you should establish a policy that whomever wants that school district, and again, it's not by law, but you can establish it, a business policy. Whoever wants the school district to pay their cell phone use, you can make a carrot to make an itemized bill so the public can open and read everything, what do they do, what are they afraid, who are they talking to during the school hours. I don't think that they're doing nothing wrong. If they're doing nothing wrong, they should be not afraid on just complying with an OPRA and giving out to the public if they request that information. Transparency is always good. So now, with that being said about the tablets, I hope that you take care by next meeting, because I will be coming back. There's people right here, you get paid nothing, you got no benefits, no medical benefits. Why you should be spending $20, $30 a month? We got people right here that's making over $150,000, $170,000. They're not gonna get another job like that. They can tell you all they want, they're not gonna get another job like that. And on top of that, we pay the cell phone bills, and they cannot provide you with a tablet. It's up to you to make the motion and just make it happen. Now, a couple months ago, I was told the BA, business administrator, will not talk to me, even if I come to the office. Fine, I'm going to put you in notice. I'm going to put you in notice tonight. That if that happened with any other parent that they talk in that office, I will consider that discrimination. Because I don't think that Saturday is the kind of town that have a closed door policy. Shame on you for not trying to put the face with all the monies that you're making. What is wrong with you people? You should be responding. Simple questions. To just say it to everything to put in writing. Is that the kind of message that we want to give to the parents when they have questions? Don't open yourself for nothing, please. It is my last thing. I never want to be in that position. But you're putting me in a predicament that whatever is good for me is good for other people? No. What is good for me is good for everybody. What is bad for me is bad for everybody. Otherwise, it should be considered not even discrimination, but any other type, I don't even know how to call it. Favoritism, for lack of better terms. Favoritism, not discrimination. Favoritism. If you close your door on me, it should be closed to everybody else. Simple as that. And I will be watching. So that's another line item that I had on my package from before. And I also said about shared services with the town. At the end of the day, there's just one single taxpayer. They don't care, they don't understand, maybe. But the reality is that the packets are paying for all this. I said shared services because it's obvious that the school district cannot do their task. Even though that we have created positions that it didn't exist before, we got an assistant superintendent for part-time job, $20,000. We got a superintendent of building and grounds that do not sign in. How do we know when the person comes to work? What time he comes, what time he leaves? He or she leaves. When is the person on vacation? You are not here every day. It's not your job. You should establish policy. Because if that person would be here on time, every day, it should not be reason to create a job of $20,000 for an assistant. Also, it should not be a reason why the employees are making their own time sheets. Recently, we got cases in which people go to jail because it's criminal to doctor or forge time sheets. And especially with people that got black seal. That is a very, very thin line right there because you gotta be reported to the state when something happened. What kind of leadership do we have if the person don't even sign in? Please, let's go back, analyze what can be done. You elected officials are there to do policy. You can't be told that the attorney is just a guidance. That professionals just get paid to give you professional advice. You don't have to do what the attorney tells you. You don't have to follow what Dr. Cox tells you or Mr. Karate. Ultimately will be your decision. And it's obvious, it has become obvious. With all respect to Mr. Cox, he doesn't like to be challenged. He doesn't like to be questioned. But you have to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be a status quo, and they will continue doing whatever they feel is better. But no, it is your call, it's your show. You are the one being elected. They don't care. All they're looking for is just to get tenure. But you are here for years to come and to run for re-election. You will be judged based on the policies that you establish in the school district. Finally, let's just be careful when we advertise jobs. In a lot of the jobs, these comes to me through the chair. A lot of the jobs are being advertised with a salary of $52,000. I believe it's wrong. Poor lines. The moment that you set salary of $52,000 a year, you are making that employee a salary employee and not an hourly employee. According to our contract, a salary employee don't sign in, yes, but everybody wants the overtime. When you want to be a salary employee, you don't get overtime. You can't be playing both. Either you're a salary or you're an hourly rate employee. So let's be careful when we post on the job listings, whether the person's going to work is going to earn per hour, how many hours, are they gonna be making? Because there's some confusion, where some employees work 32 hours, 32.5 hours for a full-time job, or 35 hours. But that will be up to you guys when you do the job. I will reserve some of my other comments for this. Thank you all for listening tonight, and if you got any questions, I'll be here.
Mr. President, can I respond to
Some of the comments that Mr. Rodriguez made. First, I just wanted the public and also Mr. Rodriguez to be aware, I don't draft board policy, nor do I review it. The board has a contract with Strauss Esme, which is a policing company, that drafts all of the policies in accordance with state law. They actually, I believe, the last time I checked, probably have about 95% of the school districts in the state of New Jersey, and they draft the policy. So none of the language that you referred to came out of my office or was even reviewed. Secondly, board self-evaluation, the policy you referenced there, that is required by state law. We have no choice in the matter. The board does not have any choice in the matter. And the last comment I just wanted to make is that superintendents in the state of New Jersey that work for Board of Educations are no longer eligible for tenure.
If I may, to the chair. And the NJSA 18A11.1, when the attorney refers to mandatory, it's not mandatory, it's a formalist. That you are just required to fill in, I just said that. No one will ever get a name for the number. That is a joke. And that's what I meant when I said, the only evaluation that you have to worry, it's not about this one, is when you go to the election time, to the polls. Second, me, I was just reading quickly the state language. In my opinion, the state usually refer that to the school districts, and that's to the attorney to review. In my opinion, the same goes for any single municipality. And again, that's my opinion. Third, the superintendent is what is going to have tenure or not. I refer in the past, the 5-year package that was given to Mr. Cox was very generous. In the future, we have a new superintendent. It should be 2 or 3 years, no more than that. Then we move on. They like the person into 5 years. Now, whether the tenure comes or not, no one, absolutely no one is above the Board of Education members. Ultimately, I have to ask you on the street, here, whatever, and you have to be ready to answer questions to the public. You were elected for the public, by the public, to the public. One more thing. At the beginning of the year, some of the new members that got elected, not very old members, they didn't have the chance to select the new professionals. And I was told back then that is because you change the school elections from 1 month to November, from May to November. You assuming in January, it used to be at the middle of the year, but we are on a fiscal year. Now, I just read that last month you select again your professionals. So then it's going to be an election in November. They're going to be selected in January. When are you going to be even? That whenever the new members get selected, that should be when the new professionals should be selected. I was told at the beginning of the year that this year you will level it out, but they just choose them last month. Again, so then when are we going to be even with your election? Your election now is in November. And you taking office in January. So you should just be at one point or the other, just be selecting the professionals for X amount of months. And starting January, along with the new, actually December 31st, 2000, whatever. So on January 1st, the new Board of Ed members, along with the existing ones, should select the new professionals, and so on, the new Board of Ed president, the vice president, and so on. Because it's crazy that right now, you're going to start in January, but now, last month, in May, they select the professionals, and then the insurance guy has been selected in October. So when are we gonna be even? Because we have to be in November, whether we like it or not, at least for 3 years. So the new members that got elected should be able to have a say with a new professional. That's all I gotta say for tonight. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Does anyone else wish to address the board? May I have a motion to close to the public? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, may I have a motion to go in, I'm sorry.
All right, so just to go through a few of those items, the $500,000 for capital reserve, as I said earlier, that's a maximum amount. It doesn't mean that that amount of money would be left over at the end. That's the maximum allowable amount. What lines those come from are going to depend and be determined at the end of the year once all our bills are closed out. But it's not saying that there's $500,000 to make that deposit. That's just the maximum allowable amount. Go ahead. Sure.
Also on that is, this action has to get done in June. It cannot be done in July, August, or in orders that were ordered in October, November. So it's got to be done now, or you just can't do it. So this past year, the 14-15 year, we transferred money from surplus. We're looking to replenish that, and if there's any funds left over, we're going to this capital reserve to use for projects. So this is why this action is done. There's no specific line now that's being transferred. It's just if there's available balances left when they close out, we have this opportunity to transfer money there.
In terms of the bylaw with the election of officers, it does say there must be a quorum present. In order to elect them, it is that it's a majority of the quorum that is present. So if there's 5 members there, it's a majority of that 5. Obviously, if there were less than 5 people, you're correct, they could not be a meeting. In terms of a president who refuses, or a vice president who refuses, that is not saying that nobody on the board would take the position. What it says is when somebody's in that position, if they wouldn't perform the duties that are required for them, but they've already been elected by the board into that position. As far as why we have the 3,000s and the 4,000s, 3,000s are for certificated staff members, teachers, 4,000s are for support staff. They are a different class of employee, different qualifications, and that's why there's a whole set, not just this policy that has a 3,200, a 3212 and a 4212, but the 3,000s and 4,000s exist as separate policies for different type of staff member. As far as the tablets for board members, we can revisit that with this board, but we have had that conversation earlier last year in one of our committees with board members. The board members at that time felt that it wasn't something they wanted to do because, and we agreed. We were looking for ways to go paperless. We talked about some of the options that are out there. Some of the better options do require every board member to have a tablet, but everybody agreed that we didn't want money taken out of the classroom when our students didn't have these devices on a one-to-one. We certainly didn't want to give our board members a one-to-one and not supply that to our students. In terms of not talking to Mr. Rodriguez, I've invited Mr. Rodriguez in to meet with me at least 3 to 4 times, so I certainly would not say my door is closed, and I still would extend that to you anytime that you'd like to come in and meet. You haven't taken me up on that, but again, I'm happy to sit with you on any topics that you want at any time. You mentioned something about an assistant superintendent. We do not have an assistant superintendent, so I just want to clarify that. And we do not advertise any positions with a salary attached to it. So I'm not sure which position that is, but nothing goes into the papers or gets posted with a salary in that posting. And feel free to question or challenge anything you like. Thank you.
Through the chair. Just one other comment. I was on the board when we said no to the tablets because we all had it. And also, in case any board member does not know this, if there is any section you do want printed out, all you have to do is request it printed out, and Ray's office will be glad to print out any section or the entirety of it for any board member that would like that to happen.
Okay. And through the chair, we do our elections in January as a new group, not in November for a president.
Yeah, the election's in November, and the board is appointed in January.
That's when we pick our president.
I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Quinn said, that I would rather use the resources in the classroom for the students. So for me to have a tablet that I have at home and at work, You know, I mean, I don't need one supplied by the board, personally. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but for me, I'd rather use the,
My own iPad.
very good. Okay.
I just have a couple comments as well. It was mentioned that I will not speak to Mr. Rodriguez. I've been here 8 years. I've met with you several times, many times. I've discussed over the phone. I've answered your questions. I've met with you. There's times you just can't just pop in the board office and I'm there to meet with you. There's a lot of work to be done. There's many follow-up questions. That's why I need you to put stuff in writing, because you're not asking clear questions. You're not understanding what I'm saying. I just want to get it right. I want to understand your question, and I'll answer it. So I have no problem with that, and I've never said no to you. If I'm not available, I'm not available. That's that part. And most of our contracts, you mentioned about the time frame. All our professionals, everything's on a fiscal year. We run July to June, not January to December like the town.
Okay, may I have a motion to go into closed session to recess to executive session to discuss personnel contract negotiations and matters covered by the attorney-client privilege per NJSA 10:4-6, et set, Open Public Meetings Act. The subject matter discussed may be disclosed to the public if and when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Action may be taken when the board reconvenes in open session. May I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.